Welcome to Accelerate Your Wealth, a podcast by Rebecca Robertson, founder and director of Evolution Financial Planning. We hope you enjoy the show, and please feel free to leave us a review. It really does help. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram, or head over to www.rebeccarobertson.co.uk or our sponsor, Evolution Financial Planning, for regulated advice on www.evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk/podcast.
Today we're going to be talking to Julie Creefield, who is an award-winning speaker, author and business strategist. She has done many things over her 30 years of career, and I can definitely say that's the case when you get chatting to her today. She's got such a broad range of experience, and all of them have involved change, helping communities, individuals and organisations to make important shifts they need to make. From humble beginnings with her fair share of adversity and personal struggle, Julie has used her unique ideas, energy and social movements not only to create change in her life, but to create a lasting legacy in the lives of millions of others around the world. She's an author of 14 books, and the last one that we're going to be talking to her about today, and the whole sort of ethos of the conversation, is titled How Not to Be Broke. So we're going to be talking to Julie today all about there's so much involved. Like, if you're thinking about going self-employed, you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur or a very small business owner, and you're feeling a bit lost, you're not sure what you should be doing, how you should be doing it, you're getting confused with all the online noise that you're hearing out there, you're not sure whether you should invest in something or not, if you're on the right path, what you should and shouldn't be doing right now, then this is perfect for you. This is exactly what you need. But how not to be broke can apply to anyone at any stage in business. There's some real tips in this podcast about how you can be proactive, productive, and make your business purposeful and profitable. So enjoy. Go. Oh my goodness, we have been talking for like 40 minutes maybe. And I'll tell you what, you guys would have loved to hear this conversation. But we're gonna we're not gonna behave ourselves. Are we gonna behave ourselves, Julie?
I don't know, I can't promise that.
No, nor can I. You're a little bit of a naughty influence, I think. I love your honesty, and I love how we've both been in. How long have you been running your business, and particularly in the online space, for, Julie?
I've been a solopreneur for almost 30 years. In Easter come in, it will be 30 years since I got my first freelance contract.
Wow.
My company has been in existence since 2007, but it's been in many different shapes. But I've been helping freelancers, creatives, small business owners, experts since around 2003, specifically.
That's a lot of knowledge right there,
Yeah.
right? And what would you say is the most toxic trait that you have seen in your 30-year career?
Yeah, I think I had a very successful plus size fitness business, and it was an online business because I was a single mum. I had a newborn baby, and I couldn't be a personal trainer because I couldn't get childcare, and the business model doesn't work like that. It wouldn't make me enough money. So I designed that business to be online purely for my own situation, and it was long before fitness went online, right? It's 2010 I started that business. And I didn't know anything about the online business coaching world, not a thing. I didn't know who all the people were. I didn't know the models. I didn't know how people sold to people on webinars. And so when I dipped my toe in that world, I was like, holy shit, like I've arrived. Like I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was a consumer of all of that. We can all be millionaires, and it's all about money mindset. And, I really kind of was like, yeah, because I'd never looked at money mindset before, and I didn't know what was possible. And so I, for a couple of years, was in that messy place of believing it all. And then I think you have some success, and some of that success would have been as a result of being in that world. But then you go, actually, how much of this is true and how much of it is bullshit? And I think there's an element of, we look to the people that look like they have success, right? And once you're in that world, you realize, yeah, of course they've got testimonials, because, you know, 1 out of 50 people do get to 6 figures, or 1 out of, you know, it's ratios, it's a numbers game. And so they're not technically lying, because their sales pages are right for maybe 1% of the people. And when you're in that 1%, it's great. I was in a program where I was in the 1%. I was like, yeah, I've just had a multiple 6-figure business. Woohoo. But I realized, you know, all of my peers, all of the people that were in that group with me, they didn't. So when you're in it yourself and you're the success story, it's amazing. But when you're not, you realize actually a lot of the messaging isn't for the masses. It's for the few. And I think I was an anomaly in that program, because most of the people that do extremely well are the people that already come from money, that already have resources to put behind Facebook ads, that already have a network, that already have people who have come out of corporate that are sitting there a bit bored with money to spend. And so it's only when you unpack all of that and you've been in it for a while and you see the cycles going round and round. You've got to, you know, you've got to do high ticket. No, don't do high ticket. It's all about the mini products, you know, and it just goes round and round and fucking round, you know.
It's like flares. Will they come back into fashion? You know, that you're so right. They just come around. And what I found hilarious just in the last 2 or 3 months is there's somebody else on the scene, and it's like they are the one. It's like it's something out of school playground, you know, where like you have the popular new girl. And they're just like, this is going to sound really derogatory, and it's not intending to offend anyone, but it's a bit like sheep. When everyone sort of like just follows the masses, right? And you think, well, if they're doing it, I can do it. And I shared with you before that I've talked about this before on my show. I had my membership, I had a mastermind, and it was washing its face, but it weren't making me money. And I was having to do a lot of outsourcing to make it work whilst I was running my regulated business. And although my regulated clients didn't suffer, I suffered because I was getting pulled in too many directions. And actually, it sounds crazy. I already had a 6-figure successful financial services business that I probably gave like not even half my energy to, because I was in that little whirlwind that you described of like, wow, look at all this new stuff, and you know, a bit of a magpie trying to learn it all.
But you don't know what you don't know. This is the problem, you know. And we go onto social media because we're told that's how you sell. But what happens is we become consumers. As much as we go, right, we're the producers, we're the ones inviting people to our stuff. No, we go, oh, what's my competitors doing? Oh, what's that person doing? And before you know it, you're convinced to buy into things you don't even need. Oh, you must have a YouTube channel. Okay, then I'll go and get that. You must have a score up. Okay, I'll go and do that. And all the while you're chasing these things, the core basics of having something good that people actually want goes out the window.
Yeah, we forget the basics, don't we? Yeah, I totally understand that. For me, I thought webinars would be great. So when I scaled down, I got rid of membership, I got rid of the mastermind. I thought, right, what can I do for my regulated business? I know I'll do webinars. Like, no, it just didn't work for me.
Webinars don't work for me.
Would work for somebody else, but it just didn't work. And there were so many examples of that where I tried really hard. I did all the right things. I listened to all the right trainers, and it just didn't click.
And part of the problem with that is when you invest in a coach or, you know, an expert that's helping you with those things, and it's just not for you, right? It's just not the right strategy for you. And you say, well, it's not worked. And then they make you feel like you've done it wrong. Well, it's got to be you. It's like going to Weight Watchers, isn't it? You go to Weight Watchers, you put 2 pounds on, but you followed the plan to the T, and they go, well, you know, you're obviously lying. There's something you didn't put down. I'm like, no, I did it. I did exactly what you asked me to do. Look, there's the meal plan. But just sometimes things are not a good fit. You know,
there's a lady called Nicola Hurren who I love. She's so authentic, and she's a sort of she does a little bit of corporate, she does a little bit of business coaching, and she had a business called CEO Mums, and I think it still is called that, and she talks about being a cookie cutter industry, that, you know, you've got this magic formula, and, you know, it's my magic formula, and if you don't buy into my magic formula, then any other formula is not correct, but actually if you follow my formula, you will win. But I was following the formulas and it wasn't working for me or my business. It was either my skill set or my resources or my audience. And that's what I found, that when I was trying to sell the membership, I was spending so much more marketing resources and on my mastermind. But that's not what people wanted from me. I closed the mastermind, and then I said to people, right, who hasn't started investing? Because I've done a course on it in the membership. And they come to me, most of them said, no, I haven't done it. And I said, right, I'm going to do an offer for you as a 1-to-1, really cheap, because you've been in my membership. And I had like 20-25 people say, yes, please. They would rather pay 3 times the annual membership as a one-off lump sum and pay me to do it for them.
But this is the thing, like when we listen to experts, and I am not cutting down experts, because we do, when we don't know, you know, it is useful to listen to experts for sure. But when the proportion of what we're listening to is so heavily focused on the experts that we stop listening to ourselves, we stop listening to what we intrinsically know, and we stop talking to and listening to our audience, then it becomes just stupid, you know?
You're flying blind, aren't you?
Yeah. And you know, I think that is primarily why I wrote my book, because I was so fed up of listening to other people. You know, I got made redundant at the start of this year. I'd taken a full-time job for security, right? Because I wanted to move out of London. I lived in London 45 years and I just couldn't get a mortgage with my business, despite doing 6 figures and all of those things. I just couldn't get a mortgage to afford to live in London. So I thought, right, get a full-time job, really good salary, and I'll move out. Did that. Month later, got made redundant, right? So there I am, back to square one, now with more overheads, and I'd wound down both of my businesses. So beginning of the year, I felt completely broken, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, I should know how to do this shit. I've been in business a long time, and I found myself wanting to sign up with a coach. I found myself wanting to find somebody else's expertise. And I said, no, you've got to sit down and work out what your process is for bouncing back, for bouncing forward. And so that's why I wrote the book. It's based on 12 principles, 12 things that have worked over and over and over again for me. Doesn't mean those things are easy. Right. So principle number 2, radical self-responsibility. That's a fucker. You know, every time I look at that one, I'm like, yep, it's like holding a mirror up, you know.
Oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable.
You know, and that's the thing. The things that work aren't always easy. Right. Yeah. And so when you see these webinars and they're like, it gets to be easy, it's all about vibe, go and dance. And, you know, like, yeah, it's all well and good. Those things help. Right. But if you are shit at what you do, if your marketing is rubbish, if you've got visibility issues, all of those things, it don't matter how much you dance under the moon. You know, there's some key principles of doing business, key skills. Not everyone is designed to be an entrepreneur, despite what the world will tell you. Some people just don't have a creative bone in their body. They don't understand how to make a profit. They give everything away. They're people pleasers. And unless you're going to nip those things in the bud and change some of your behaviors, you're always going to be running a loss-leading business. And I think if you're okay with that, fine, no judgment. You know, it's okay, because business can do other things for you. But what I find is so many people are running loss-leading businesses and they're not willing to own up to that.
I hear it all the time. You know, people that you would think are, you know, on the face of it, doing quite well, but they haven't got profits to do what they need to do. And that's either because they're lying or they're spending their profits on unnecessary things, as we've just mentioned. You know, investing in another course is only investment if you know the return of investment. So unless you go, someone messaged me the other day and said, oh, should I go and work with so-and-so, or should I go on this mastermind? And I said, in 6 months' time, once you've spent X amount of money with the X and Y, what return of investment do you want to see? And that answered it. It was so clear cut, because one was more of like a nice to have, and it was like more of a like a personal development thing, whereas the other one was actually a growth spectrum to actually grow the business. And then she said, well, if I could take on X number of more clients because I've got a better support team around me, because I've managed that better, then that will give me a better return of investment. And sometimes we get caught up in that whirlwind. So you've got either lying about it, spending unnecessarily, which not spending on yourself is not always the return of investment. It can be working on those, you know, glass ceiling, those procrastination, working on, you know, giving the money away all the time, working in certain areas, you know, you need to work on. Yes, that can be a really good return of investment. And then the other one is, they're lying, they're spending it. I had another one in my head. scratching my head, literally. I can't remember what the third one was. I've obviously got carried away about.
But I think there's one about not needing it, right? And I'll be completely transparent. I think the reason that I've been so successful in business is because I've got no other bloody choice, right? Yeah. I don't have wealthy parents that can bail me out. I don't have a partner. I've not had a partner that has supported me ever in my life. So if I don't make money, there is a direct consequence to that. And so sometimes, you know, I'll have calls with clients or potential clients, and I ask them about their why. I ask them how much money they want to make or need to make. And it's also wishy-washy. It's like, oh, it would be nice if I could make, you know, an extra whatever. And then when it comes down to the crunch, when they don't go for the sale, and it don't really matter that, you know, their husband pays the bills. And, you know, I'm not being judgmental, but I think a lot of success comes from that drive, that being hungry. And, you know, it might be that you're hungry for something else. It might be that you're financially stable, but you're hungry for, you know, your ego pushes you because you want to be seen to be successful, or you're trying to prove something wrong. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things, 100%. But just admitting it to yourself, admitting that's what drives the industry.
100%. I mean, I've been with my partner 23 years, and I've been fiercely independent. The amount of times when I first started my business, he was, you know, first 2 or 3 years, I really struggled. I mean, I'm talking struggled. I had a 4 or 5 year old. You name it, I done it. I did a psychic fair. I did a wedding fair. I did a baby fairs, some of the big expo baby events. You name it, I'd done it. I tried everything. I threw myself into the whole thing. And my main motivation was to be financially independent. And my husband and my dad just kept saying, you don't need to work, Becky. Why are you working so hard, Becky? Why don't you just go and work in a bank and work a bit part-time, Becky? Now, I'm not dissing anyone to do that, but I wanted to be financially independent, because what I see, as much as I speak to a lot of women who have got divorced that have no pension, and they're having to hold on to the assets within the house because they've been reliant on their partner paying into the pension. They have gaps in their employment, they have gaps in their pensions, they're retiring later, and then you add divorce into the equation. It is massively detrimental to their finances. And if they're single mums, it is even worse. Retirement is even worse, because there's bigger gaps, because you haven't got the childcare, you haven't got necessarily the support all the time. Some partners are obviously better than others, but if you're definitely a single solopreneur, a single mom, it's massive impact. So for me, it was more about, I wanted to keep my financial independence. Now I'm 13 years later, and I have got a stable business. Like, I could take a month off. I wouldn't, because I've got clients to look after. I've got a team to run, and I love what I do. But if I did, I would still have a 6-figure business. It's not passive. Not saying it is at all. But I would still have a business. And the reason I wanted to do those things is because my husband wasn't going to pay for my horse. My husband wasn't going to pay for my daughter's horse. You know, we've got 2 children in private school. I pay for one of those. So it's not like, then you get to a point where you set yourself up expenditure wise. You're like, and not doing that beyond your means is obviously crucial. But then that puts that sort of pressure on you to achieve a certain level, and that doesn't matter where you're at. And that's happened. So when I first went, I went and saw a client who was earning over 100 odd grand years and years and years ago, and he said that was going to do some life insurance. His kids are there, his wife's there, the kids are running around, and he's like, I don't know where all the money goes. Like, literally the money just goes. And it doesn't matter if I was talking to a similar family and they were on 20 grand a year, they'd say exactly the same. That's what people do. They just naturally, you have the money come in, you don't go, well, I'm going to put 25% of it aside just in case to reinvest in my pension or whatever else. We go, oh, well, I'll go and get a car loan, or I'll go and, you know, invest in another coach to work with, or we don't lean on the side of sensible. And I think solopreneurs are even worse at that, because there is drive and environment to make you go, no, you go for more, and that's keeping up with the Joneses as well, obviously.
And I think it's creating that kind of secure base. Like, your finances are one part of it, and actually one of the things that I do, I talk about it like a chair, right? financial stability is one part of it, but you've also got to have like physical stability, emotional stability, and spiritual, I call it spiritual, but like belief, right? When those things start falling apart, right? Yes, you can live on 3 of those. You try having a stool with 2 legs, right? And so even if you've got those 4 things that are really stable, the environment can change. We saw that during COVID, right? The environment changed, and a lot of coaches or gurus that were very successful, they also had to change their strategy and their tactics. So their whole business model changed. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a kind of hangover from the pandemic, cost of living, all of the crises that are going on around the world. Lots of solopreneurs took out bounce back loans because the coaches were encouraging them to, because they wanted them to have cash flow to be able to continue investing. Guess what's happening now? People having to pay those bloody loans back off. So there is going to be an element of people not being able to invest in coaching for a while. Because they didn't perhaps get the return on investment with those loans. And now they've got 2 years, 3 years of paying that back and being reminded of it every month.
Yeah. That's a long, I hope you got a return of investment on there somehow or something. It wasn't just a jolly. So tell me a little bit about your 12 principles in your book. Tell me some more.
I think they are all things that can be done separately to one another. So it's not like a system, it's not a process, it's not like do these 12 steps, it's not a 12-step process, it's not a program. It's more reminders, right? So one of the things that really frustrates me is when people go, hopefully, they build their businesses on hope, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with hope as an emotion. You've got to have hope, because otherwise you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. But if you do not have a strategy, if you're using hope as your strategy, then you are royally fucked. Right? You have to have a strategy. You can't just keep winging it. So the first principle is about hope not being a strategy. A strategy is a strategy. There's some principles that are around kind of knowing the numbers, reviewing the data. There are some ones about sales. You have to learn how to sell. You can't keep going, I don't like selling. I don't enjoy it. I'm not very good at it. Don't be in business then. Like, genuinely, if you can't do sales and you don't have enough money to outsource your sales, you can't be in business.
It's very hard to outsource sales. Very hard.
It is very hard.
You can't put the same passion or anything behind it. Katie's in my team, and it's not sales as such, but I guess you would call it that. It's all around the positioning, how we help people. That's a form of sales.
Yeah.
Katie does my initial discovery calls. But she's worked with me for nearly 7 years, and she's very much ingrained in the business. It's not something I think you can just get. I paid a sales agency once actually to get me more leads, and actually she was an online favourite, she still owes me money, put it that way.
Yeah. And then one of the other big ones for me is about time, right? When you work out how many years you've got left in your professional life, can you really waste the next 2 weeks, the next 3 weeks? People put off the sales thing. They go, I'll launch next month, or I'll launch it, and I, during the pandemic, I think it was fear that drove it, if I'm being honest. I launched 15 different offers, did over £250,000 of sales, was homeschooling, didn't even have a bloody outside space at home. It was, and I think what that time showed me, and I think it showed a lot of people, is that we use a lot of excuses in our business, right? And when the shit hit the fan, all of a sudden I stepped up. I was leveraging every last bit of time that I had available, and I was able to work really hard, graft. But also I made some real clear things. I remember saying to my clients, don't email me. I'm literally not going to read your emails. Just don't email me. Because emails was the thing that I could spend 4 hours going through emails, and you never respond to things, So I just literally made a public service announcement, just don't talk to me.
You email them, and then you email you back, and then email, and you've got 20 people doing that. It takes up a lot of time.
So one of the things that I share in the book is my color-coded system, right? Most of the stuff we do in our business doesn't make any difference. It makes us feel better, but it doesn't make us make any difference. So I talk about gold list activities, right? And the problem with gold list activities is you can't tick them off in a morning. right? So most gold list things require a little bit of thinking, a little bit of creativity, lots of courage, and they tend to take 2 or 3 weeks to put everything together. So a launch would be an example of a gold list thing. The creation of a website, the creation of your social media strategy, and all of these bigger projects. And what we do is we go, oh, I've got all of this other shit. If I get that off my plate, then I'll have time for the gold list. You don't. You run out of time, you run out of energy, you never get on with it. So what I encourage people to do is to break up their gold list items, to literally earmark time in their diary. And I just block it out with a yellow pen so that I know I'm not doing anything else. I'm not looking at notifications. I'm literally just doing that. And if I spend an hour on a gold list task, even if it doesn't get finished, I give myself a gold star. And I know that sounds so juvenile, but it works. I look through my paper diary and I look at all the gold stars and I go, look at me flying,
And you've got a paper diary as well. Oh my God.
So I use both. So I've got a digital diary and a paper diary that really works for my kind of ADHD brain. But for me, I know when I'm in momentum, it's because of the gold list activities that I did 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so, and then the other thing is I color code everything. So there's 7 colors. Shit list stuff is red. And there are some things in your business that you have to do that are shit, and so minimizing the shit, blocking out. Most people say, I say to somebody, how many hours do you work on your business? And they go, oh, all week. And then when we block out the time, they've got 4 hours, 4 hours. When they're not delivering, when they're not running the kids to school, when they're not at yoga or Pilates, what you have is 4 hours. Let's build a business based on those 4 hours, should we? Rather than the 40 hours you think you can fill all those things with, and then they want to sign up to another bloody program.
Exactly that. I recently changed I was sitting here, so my working hours are 9 till 4, apart from a Tuesday, and I take my little boy swimming, so it's 9 till 3. Like 9 till 3ish, but I would sit here sometimes with admin time allocated, and I would I'd go through all my emails and I would check everything was done. I wouldn't work on what I would call gold items, but I'd be nice and tidy and message everybody back that I should have done, and then I'd have to get on with actual proper admin, looking at reports, analysing funds, the proper actual work that I'm paid for. And I would twiddle my thumbs. I would think of something else. I would waste time. I don't even know what I was doing. So I've now come up with a philosophy that my brain can't do this job, not the podcast job, talking to people, could do that all day, every day, no problem at all. But that analysing piece, that talking to clients I find super easy, but it's quite a lot. It's mentally quite draining. Highly focused on numbers and figures the whole time, the whole conversation, and taking them through a journey of a process, etc. So it's like 4 to 5 hours a day. So now my work day is 9 till 2. The first 2.5 hours I'm admin only. So when I sit down, I'm like, you've got to get that and that done.
Yeah.
And then the next 2.5 hours are on calls. And I've done it that way. When I finish at 2, if there is something urgent that needs doing, I can do it. But then I can also stop, and then I'll go and get my hair cut. Yeah. Or I'll go and I haven't got enough food for shopping. I'll go and do, because the mum mental load on top of dogs, horses and kids was just, and my husband now having to go into London more, was like, this is not working for me. And I was trying to keep up with the same pace before, and it's like, why am I doing this? This is not why I started my business.
But I think this is why, looking at yourself rather than the experts, like looking at what's going to work for me. When in my week do I have the most energy? Like a lot of people go, right, Monday morning, and they're full of beans, and they do all this shit stuff that drains all the energy out of them. Then they go, oh, I'm exhausted now. So come Wednesday, they want to wind down, So it's like, you've got to look at your own schedule and make it work for you, those high moments, those low moments, and look at how much of what I actually do day to day. How many of these networking events do I go to that actually, they make me feel nice, but don't ever lead to business? Like, you've got to make those choices for yourself, because otherwise, it sounds rude, but you've only got yourself to blame if your business is not where you want it to. And I know that there are some business owners that spend 10 years doing something they could have done in a year.
Yeah, 100%. So knowing what you know, what do you do? 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 what do you do when you're in overwhelm, or you're in sort of a situation where cash flow is not great, what you've done in the past has not worked? What advice would you give to people? Because we're in a sort of a bit of a sticky situation now. We're not going, we may or may not be going into recession. That's not really coming into it at the moment, because actually, although we're plateauing, we're not dropping our growth. Although the UK's growth is poor, it's still not dropping. Yeah. Interest rates have just stayed the same. But the main thing is that people's mortgages are going to be going up. And I think a lot of people are very much more conscious on how they are spending. So your marketing has to be even sharper than better. Like for me, a lot of people will say, well, I'm just going to keep the money in the bank because I've got money to invest, but I'll keep it in the bank at 5%. But I spoke to a lady yesterday, works for a very high-end bank, earns a lot of money, got 200 grand sitting in her bank account, earning 0.5, hasn't got the time to think about where to put it. That's my ideal client, and I will show. So, you know, there are clients out there, but it's knowing how to find your ideal client. Just because you've got to generally, like, you know, if I was going to say, well, everyone's mortgages are going up, and I'm not going to market anymore, then I wouldn't do anything.
I think it's going back to basics. So this is what I do. I grab a coloured piece of paper, and I've used this process for the last 5 years. Coloured piece of paper, and the reason I use coloured is because we lose white pieces of paper on our desks, right? So I'll get bright yellow or bright red or bright green, and I get a Sharpie pen and I draw a triangle, right? Top of the triangle, I call it the triangle of need. And I say need, not desire, because need feels like a more compelling emotion, right? But if desire feels better, then use desire. Triangle of need. Top of the triangle, what do I need? Over and above everything else, what do I personally need? Cash flow wise, ego wise, security wise, like what are all the things that I need? On the left-hand side of the triangle, what do my ideal clients need? Same thing. You know, what transformation do they need? Where are they at in their lives? What do they need ego-wise? What kind of love do they need? What kind of support? Like really investigate that. And then on the final point of the triangle, what does the world need? Right. And that's a little bit more fluffy. It might be the world needs hope. The world needs laughter. The world needs security. The world needs, you know. And if you can design an offering that serves all three of those audiences, and make it like absolutely a no-brainer for the right people to say yes, that's where the magic is, right? But then what happens is people come up with that and they go, oh my God, yes, that's the thing. And then they talk themselves out of it because they haven't got the tech, or they haven't got the website, or they haven't got people will buy that with no website. They will buy it on the concept alone. And if you're willing to have enough individual conversations or talk about it on social media enough times to get people to come into your DMs, you can sell without a sales page, you know. And then once you've validated the idea, then you can spend that money on getting the website done. But actually, it's the energy in the middle of that triangle that creates the momentum.
What's yours then? What's your thing? And what have you got coming up? Not necessarily something you've done in the past. Talk to me about that same example. But your thing.
So I spent time over the summer doing two things. So I had a big launch before the summer, and I got 6 ideal clients into one of my programs, gave me a lump sum of money. It was nice. And then I wanted to write my book. So I spent the summer writing the book and spending time with my daughter. We went on holiday and stuff like that. And then I came back, and my intention was to launch the book and go into launch to do another cohort of my legacy program. I launched the book. The book was great. It got into the top 0.3% on Amazon, all of those lovely things. The book launch was exciting, blah, 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 blah. I run out of energy and steam to do a proper launch. So I didn't get the 5 clients that I needed. So from a cash flow perspective, bearing in mind the year that I've had, it's really precarious again, right? So I've had to go back to basics. Who's my predominant audience isn't actually business owners. My predominant audience, my email list, for example, and my social media, they're ordinary people. They are people that followed my running stuff, people that have been life coaching clients. They're just normal average women, right? They are not going to be able to invest £500, £1,000 in working with me. They're just not. Most of them wouldn't even pay me £100 for anything, because, you know, my first 6-figure business was based predominantly on products that were between £5 and £25. It was a micro payment type business. So I've gone back to basics. What do I tend to launch this time of year? What do people most need? I'm doing a £20 program at the moment. It's called Countdown to Christmas. It's not even a business program, but it gives me what I need. Do you know what I need at the moment? I need that validation of I'm really good at galvanizing people. I'm really good at giving people hope. I'm really good at leveraging my assets. And, I've got this audience that I've not done much with this year. They're throwing their £20 at me. They can't wait to do the Countdown to Christmas challenge because they come back every year. I think it's my 8th year.
I'm intrigued.
So it's called Countdown to Christmas. It's bonkers. It's like an advent calendar for adults. And we do it in a Facebook group and people pay their 20 quid and every day there's a new activity. But it's bonkers. It's like, do squats in the alcohol aisle in Tesco's or, whatever it is. So it's kind of part fitness, part like don't take yourself too serious, part moan about your mother-in-law. Like it's just surviving Christmas, basically. And I've had everything from like maybe 100 sign-ups to I think the most we had one year was nearly 300. So it's the most bonkers thing I do all year. It's fun. It always makes me a few grand and it always leads to people wanting to work for me in the new year. Yeah. But for a little while, I wasn't considering doing it. So again, It's like an asset, a resource that I had that I wasn't using. I wasn't even going to do it this year. Right. But, partly I just went back to that triangle and thought, what do I genuinely need? And I need to have a bit of fun. I've worked too bloody hard this year.
I love that. And you mentioned that there was something else you're working on that's coming out, did you say next week?
Yeah, so I have been having lots of conversations with business owners who are my ideal client for the legacy work. So my legacy master plan, I worked on the Olympics. A lot of people don't know this. I worked on the Olympics for about 8 years at every stage of the Olympic process, bid phase, build phase, games time, legacy. The work that I loved doing most was the legacy work. We had like a 25-year legacy master plan. And as business owners, we never think about beyond the next 12 months, right? And so I think when you've got to a certain point in business, when you've been doing what you're doing for like 20 years or whatever, I think it's the right time to step back and go, what do I actually want? What do I want the legacy of my life and my business to be? And you've got a decision to make. You can say, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm just going to plod along. I don't need it to be bigger. Or you say, actually, I do want this work to live beyond me. And there are various models that you might use for that. You might license, you might whatever. But that's what the Legacy Master Plan does, is it gives you the space to do the thinking to create a 10-year master plan, and it's for people, sounds a bit morbid, but it's for people in the final phase of their business, the final 10 years of their professional life. And so I was having all these conversations with people that were absolutely right for it. But when it came down to the money, they're nervous about investing. They're nervous because cash flow's been low and they're just, so, and it was the same old story. And one woman said to me, I wish you just would do a program that helps me make £5,000 before Christmas. And I was like, okay, put it in one of my groups. Who else might be interested? 5 weeks to 5K. They were like, yeah. So I'm now going to be doing a program starting next week called 5 weeks to 5K. And the irony is I used to have a program called 5 weeks to 5K years ago that helped women to learn to run in 5 weeks. And I was on ITV's this morning teaching the nation to run with my 5 weeks to 5K program. So it feels like it's come full circle, and again, that concept was already there. I just hadn't thought about it yet.
No. So if people are feeling overwhelmed, then maybe they should be writing down all of the assets, like business assets that
totally
they've got, and list them all out. I know myself, sometimes there's things that I've got that I probably have forgotten about. Yeah.
And actually that's what happened through the process of writing the book. I went back to all of the things I've been teaching for years, things that I was teaching. I used to do a project in King's Cross and it was called Create King's Cross. And it was for all of the creative people that were in King's Cross doing interesting work, but didn't have business plans. I went back and I was thinking, what was the things I used to do in those sessions? And so often for me, the writing of a book isn't about new concepts. It's about consolidating what you already know.
Yeah. And so do you advocate, those like what, another thing to have, the TEDx talk or the YouTube channel? Do you advocate having a book?
No. And I tell you why. You don't make money off of a book, right? The only book I've ever made money off of is The Fat Girl's Guide to Marathon Running, right? That's my best-selling book. I wrote that in 2017, I think. And that continues to sell year after year after year after year, right? But how you make money from books isn't through the revenue, it's through what you sell off the back of it. So that book, I didn't make a lot of money off the back of it through coaching because I was only selling products that were like 50 quid or whatever. But that book got me all expenses paid trips to the New York City Marathon. It got me an all expenses trip to Israel to do something with the tourism agency there. It got me speaking gigs. It got me sponsorship deals. So that book probably has made me £500,000, not in revenue from book sales though. And I think that's where people think, oh, write a book, sell 1 million copies, and it just doesn't work like that. The average book sells less than 200 copies.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one client who's what I would call a proper author, and she makes a lot of money. Like if you walked into Sainsbury's, her books are up on the shelves.
Yeah.
And she, amazing, lovely lady. And all she does, she's not online. She's not on Facebook. She's writing books and got deadlines, and that's what she's doing. So someone you can, but if you, and I know a lot of sort of got a couple of people that I've come across in the last few years are like, oh yeah, I'm writing a book, and there is a real buzz around it, I will say. Like when I wrote, there's so much effort and energy, and for me it was almost like therapy writing my book. I send a copy of my book to any new client that I take on, so I use it more of a referral and recommendation.
It's a positioning piece. It positions you as an expert. And I think for me, my natural communication style is writing, and actually I've always wanted to be a writer. So my dream is to just live in a cottage and write books. Like genuinely, that's my dream. That's my legacy plan, and I want to live off the royalties, So for me, I can sit down, the running book, I wrote that in 28 days. I literally got the idea for it, put it up on Amazon, and it was a bestseller before I'd even written a single word, right? And in 28 days, I just took what I knew from my head and wrote it. But I don't second guess myself. A lot of people, when they go to write a book, they second guess themselves. So it takes them a year. It creates a whole heap of stress that they don't do anything else while writing their book. But for me, because I kind of cut my teeth as a blogger, I blogged for 12 years. Writing is the most easiest thing for me. I could knock out 4 books a year, easy, and still do everything else. Because that's my I probably should. And you know what? I woke up the other day and I've had this idea for a book all year round. And now that I've got the Christmas people signing up, I'm like, they're the ideal market for this other book I want to write. Yeah. So I may write a book. I'm going to decide this. I might write a book to come out on January 1st.
It sounds like your audience would really love some of your planning or stationery tools, because you're really good at that creative. If you got like an Amazon shop of something like for stationery or something.
Yeah, I don't. I've got an amazing tool. It's a Trello tool. It's called the Solopreneur Dashboard, and it's really funny. I've created it. My clients have been using it for years. It's beautifully branded thing, and I'm second guessing myself because I keep seeing other people. I keep seeing Facebook ads with these dashboards, but the other people's dashboards are done on Excel, and I hate Excel. I just, whereas my one is beautiful and you can rebrand it in your own colors and all of those kind of things, because it's the creative in me, but I need to get my finger out and start selling that as well.
It sounds like it. I can just see you having like notebooks and planners and charts and or taking all of these resources, because you're obviously good at selling at that sort of that like mass lower price point. I think you would make quite a lot of pennies that way. Well, I've really enjoyed our chat today. I loved how honest you've been with me about where you're at, where you're going, what you're doing, etc. Obviously people can buy your book, How Not to Be Broke, on Amazon. So we'll share the link in the show notes. Is there anything sort of lasting message or finishing message you'd like to end with today?
I think it is this thing that our money shouldn't define who we are. We all start life in different ways. We either come from money or don't come from money, or we're somewhere in the middle, and things happen throughout our lives that affect our financial security. And the minute we make or allow that to define us, I think we're in trouble. And I think, just knowing that you're priceless, regardless of how much is in your bank account, that for me would be my overall message.
Wow, that's massive. And that sort of comes down to, if we're having a bad time, how you feel about shame, or when jealousy that you feel when your neighbour's got a new car, and the amount of triggers we have around money mindset is very embedded, and sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. I mean, I know that some of the work that I've done on my personal development side of things has really helped with that. And I also did some what's called heart healing, where I cut lots of emotional ties to members and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really helped with my self-worth.
Yeah. And I think for me, the process of writing the book helped me to reflect on those emotional ties. I have really deep roots to my kind of working class roots, like deep ties to my working class roots. You know, my great grandma had 18 children, right? And so I think about that. And the other day I was on the train and I was like, why do I find it so hard to ask for help? Right. And this was part during the book launch. I was like, why do I find it so hard to ask for help? And I just had this epiphany, because we were the help. Like in the background, my nan was a cleaner. You know, many of my aunts were nursery nurses. Working class people were the people that gave the help.
Yeah.
You know, and this stuff, it's really hard. You've got to unpack it. Yeah.
It's ingrained. I mean, I wrote some notes in my journal. I try and journal every now and again. And what I noticed with my journaling was that I was always, for quite a while, I was always writing down the things that I weren't happy with. The gaps and things that weren't great. And I listened to a money mindset book. I forget her first name, but her surname's Mafusi, because it rolls off the tongue so beautifully. But I can't remember her. It begins with an N. Mafusi. Anyway, if you're interested, message me and I'll send you the details. But she talked about, like, you know, obviously gratitude. But when you're constantly thinking about all the negatives, that's obviously from a manifestation, that's what you're bringing to yourself all the time. So I sort of tried to re-journal a different way and actually focus on some of the positives. And then what I noticed is that I seem to be not thinking about how I could sort of have more or do more, or, you know, what's the next step look like. I sort of found myself, I was like leveling at a certain level.
Plateauing.
Yeah, and that's because my dad used to my dad gave me that impression. He used to say things to me which just, you know, people like us kind of mentality.
Only get to a certain level. We should be grateful for what we've got. Like, don't rock the boat. All of those. We should be aspiring to be middle class, not anything above that. Like it's
like, don't get above the station, love.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
And, you know, and like having horses. My dad's never come to see my horses. He's not really interested in them, to be fair. But, you know, when I was growing up, I wanted horse riding lessons. My mum used to take me for Christmas birthday presents, like odd things. But I actually didn't buy my own horse until I was I've had him 4 or 5 years and I'm 43, so I'm talking late 30s.
Yeah,
I was loaning in my late 20s. I started to ride in my late 20s, and my dad used to say, no, that's for people, that's for like the kings and queens, sweetheart, it's not for people like us. So it's interesting how you start it's so ingrained in part of our how and it makes me think about, I had a conversation with a lady, Agata, who came on last week, but I'm not sure when it's going to be released when people are listening to this. But it talks about basically your money mindset and how it affects your kids, how you're coming across with your kids. So if you're in struggle and you're like always worrying about money, like my daughter messaged me yesterday saying we've changed her bedroom around, and she's like, well, can I have all new bed sheets? And I was like, more bloody money on bed sheets. And actually what she chose were only 20 quid. I should have just got them, but I was like, no, you've got your own pocket money, you can buy my husband was like, you tired backer, like you can't even buy bed sheets. I was like, no, she can wait for Christmas. It's like, Christmas, bed sheets at Christmas, what kid wants bed sheets at Christmas? It sort of comes from that sort of, you know, you make do kind of mentality.
Totally.
Yeah, well, I've loved talking to you today, Julie. Thanks for coming on and telling me all about your book. And if you ever need anyone to talk to about working out what your business legacy is, then obviously go and get in touch with Julie. Or if you fancy the sound of her 5K to Christmas or her countdown to Christmas and want a little bit of fun, then obviously go and check out the links in the show notes as well. So should I be saying it? It's too early to say Merry Christmas now.
A little bit.
I'm not gonna say it. All right, lots of love.
Thank you.